Good morning. It's Monday, December 8th, 2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Syria claims Israel bombed targets near Damascus. China surpasses the United States to become the largest economy in the world. And later on the show, everything there is to know about the history of football's World Cup mascots. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi. We begin with news from Syria. The Syrian government officials yesterday accused Israel of bombing areas near Damascus International Airport and in the town of Dima, near the border with Lebanon. Residents and monitoring groups reported hearing a series of blasts in the airport's storing ground and at a military base in the city's southern suburbs. In the past couple of years, Israeli and U.S. officials confirmed that IDF jets had targeted Iranian missiles bound for Lebanon's Hezbollah within Syrian territory, as well as a 2007 strike destroying an unfinished nuclear facility. Now, so far, no one in Israel has confirmed or denied yesterday's alleged attack. To discuss it further and the implication of the attack, we're joined in studio by Walla senior defense correspondent Avi Sischarov. Avi, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And, of course, by our one and only I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waqid.
Good morning.
Ali, good morning to you. Before we break it down, let's take a look at the next report from Shai Ben-Ari about the latest from Syria.
The Israeli enemy has struck an aggressive attack on Syria, targeting two peaceful areas in a suburb of Damascus in Dimas and near Damascus International Airport for civilians. There has been no loss of human life.
A dramatic regional development came Sunday evening when Syrian media reported Israeli Air Force planes had struck a number of security targets in the country, all in the vicinity of Damascus. Strikes were reported in the area of the capital's international airport, as well as in the town of Al-Dimas to the west. Damascus residents said loud explosions were heard throughout the city, and reports emerging from Lebanon also noted warplanes flying in the skies. This is far from the first time that Israel has been linked to airstrikes in Syrian territory, even since civil war broke out in the country over 3 years ago. Last February, an attack on a Hezbollah weapons convoy also had fingers being pointed at Israel, while a missile attack on the Latakia naval base in November 2013 has also been widely considered Israel's doing, though formal responsibility was not assumed in either case. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stressed in the past that Israel would not allow advanced weaponry to leak over the border and into the hands of Hezbollah.
Now, Avi Sischarov of Times of Israel as well. I want to start with you. Israel has not confirmed nor denied this attack, but it has been reported massively around in foreign outlets. It's fairly clear that it was most likely the IDF jets, isn't it?
Unless there's some kind of foreign air force that really wanted to bomb some Syrian facilities that we're not aware of, or something mysterious happened, like mysterious explosions, but I guess this is not the case.
It's most likely not the case.
Yeah, we can only assume that it was the Israeli Air Force.
Now, when it comes to, and putting that as the main assumption, why would Israel go and bomb those facilities near Damascus?
Well, the last, I would say, 6 years, but especially since the beginning of the civil war in Syria, 3.5 years ago, almost 4, Israel, on a kind of continuing measures against supplying of weaponry from Syria into Hezbollah, meaning that every time that there are some special weapons that Syria is about to send to Hezbollah, Israel is attacking them. Sometimes it's near the border, sometimes it's near Damascus. I mean, we've been witnessing that as an ongoing operations of the Israeli army trying to send a message not only to Syria but also to Hezbollah. We will not continue, or will not agree to accept the idea that Hezbollah will have a very high-tech weaponry that might damage Israeli facilities.
They might damage Israeli facilities. Speaking of those attacks, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because indeed, I think it's important to remind our viewers that Israel has bombed Syria. There's a graph that came up in Haaretz newspaper this morning in October 2013, July 2013, February 2014. I mean, this is an ongoing thing. December 7th, 2014, military targets, etc. It's not, it's not something that's out of the ordinary. But this specific attack, and I'm asking you, Ali, now. Ali Wakit, Senior Middle East analyst for I-24. This specific attack is being, well, first of all, it's being regarded as highly controversial within Israel by the opposition. When an attack as this comes about, and I'm reading something last night that on an Israeli website, that that Syria and Hezbollah are in a late-night talks, how Hezbollah is going to react to an attack as such from Israel. Are we to expect retaliation?
Well, I don't know if we are supposed to expect retaliation in the coming days or in the very next future. In the past month, Hezbollah showed that he has his own way to riposte, whether by bombs in the borders, that he is working on the equation that he will choose, the organization will choose the place and the timing to retaliate. It won't be something that big, something that will increase the involvement of the IDF in the civil war in Syria and maybe change the game. And it was not a mistake when I mentioned to increase the involvement, because according to the Syrians and the report that was published in the by the United Nations a couple of days ago, that shows that Israel is deeply involved. I mean, we've been quoting here Syrian regime sources that says that since day one of the civil war, Israel put at the service of the rebels satellites, footages, and information about the hangars of the Syrian regime and important post of the Syrian army, so the rebels can use it. And by the way, in this strike, the Syrians are talking also about the timing, the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu needs this attack in a very tough electoral campaign on one hand, and on the other hand, it is related, according to the Syrians, to the fact that the regime succeeded to block a counterattack, a very big counterattack that the rebels led in the last days in the region of Deir ez-Zor, that the regime succeeded to stop and to raise the morale of the rebels. And at the demand of the Saudis and other rebels allies, the Israeli Air Force led the strike.
But, other than the cooperation supposedly between, Israelis on that northern border, we're going to touch on that in a second. I'm wondering out loud, and Avi, maybe you can help me with this. Attacks as such, do they really destabilize Hezbollah? Do they really, do what they're supposed to do in that respect?
Well, we can only guess that yes, that at the end it does prevent Hezbollah's potential from the option of attacking some very specific targets inside Israel in the next war to come. But more than that, what's very interesting for me, I find it very fascinating, the fact that Bashar al-Assad's regime in the last, I would say 12 hours, maybe 16 hours, did everything possible in order to go to the media and let everyone know that this is what Israel did, in order to use it for their own front at home, meaning for their own political issues versus the opposition, versus the radicals inside Syria. They went on and saying Israel attacked us, meaning you Arabs, you Syrians, help us and not the opposition that is joining forces together with Israel, just like Ali mentioned before.
And by the way, the Syrian opposition was not enough clever when they almost celebrate the attack in their websites, and this is very strange. And Yael, we had here at this studio Israel officers who met with Syrian opposition representatives here in Israel. On camera and off camera, some of them said that they met officers in the Syrian Free Army.
In the opposition forces.
Yeah, in the opposition forces. And I think that the situation for the opposition is so desperate in Syria. It's not that the regime situation is much better, that they need any help, even if it comes from Israel.
But what is confusing about that to me is that there seems to be an understanding, and maybe I'm theorizing here, and I'll start with you, Avi, that Israel, and ergo also the United States, seems to be okay with Assad staying in power. And that seems to be some form of the administration's line, both in Israel and in the United States. It's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Isn't that the ongoing perception in the Israeli, also in the Israeli army, in the upper echelon?
I would go further than that. And I would say something that sounds terrible, and no one in Israel would admit that. But for Israel and for the US, for the meanwhile, it's pretty okay that the two devils are fighting each other. meaning that the Islamic devil headed by ISIS, or now we call it Daesh. I mean, John Kerry just mentioned the word Daesh, is fighting Hezbollah, is fighting the Syrian regime, and no side is capable of overcoming the other side. For the meanwhile, all the time that this is continuing, Hezbollah is not capable of dealing with Israel, doesn't have the energy nor the will to go for another escalation versus Israel.
Well, Hezbollah
and this is exactly what we are seeing, that every time there is a kind of a momentum for either of the sides, there is some intervention from abroad, whether against the opposition, a counterattack of Hezbollah, or in case of a momentum on the side of the regime, there is this Israeli strike. It is true that these strikes have to do also with what Avi mentioned, the threats against Israel's security, but the fact that that it is not new and nothing special. By the way, the Arab and international media did not quote blasts or explosions, specific special explosions in those hangars that were stricken. Yeah, but the question is whether Israel is still playing with the fire and trying to help one of the sides against each other, because it won't be. I think, in my opinion, the bill between Israel and Hezbollah is raising on one hand, and on the other hand, you cannot bet all the time on the jihadist groups. By the way, in some parts of the witnessing of the UN inspectors, they were mentioning Israel allowing jihadist militants passing from the Israeli-Syrian borders to the Jordan-Syrian borders via the Golan Heights.
Well, it's political capital in everyone's hand. I think, to make these blames is a very, very valid point. Also, we are hearing now, this is just a report on Channel 2 in Israel, that in Syria what was attacked were anti-aircraft missiles and drones, supposedly, which I'm assuming that comes from, intelligence information. But that cooperation that you two have been mentioning, and stays very much on point, because the new report that Ali Walker mentioned, released by the UN yesterday, exposes the extent of cooperation between Israel and Syrian opposition figures. The report details multiple communications between IDF officers and soldiers and Syrian rebels, some on humanitarian matters, but others a bit more mysterious. And take a closer look at that. Let's take a look at the following report and break it down from there.
Does the Israeli army have regular contact with the Syrian opposition? According to the UN report, IDF soldiers have interacted with Syrian rebels on several occasions. In most of the cases, Israel assisted wounded fighters who arrived at the border and needed medical treatment. According to the report, at least 47 injured Syrians were transferred to Israel and received medical assistance. But further reports suggest that the interaction was not just humanitarian. In a report released on June 10, UNDORF, the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force in the Golan Heights, mentioned 2 boxes IDF soldiers handed over to the Syrian opposition. On October 27, the observers detected 2 Syrian individuals crossing the Syrian border with the assistance of IDF soldiers. These incidents raised many questions, as at the same time tents were set up around 300 meters from the Israeli positions for some 70 Syrian refugee families. The Syrian army sent a letter of complaint to the UN saying the tent encampment was a terrorist camp. The Syrian army called for it to be evacuated, saying if not, it would be a legitimate target. UNDORF was formed in 1974 following the ceasefire between Israel and Syria after the 1973 October War. But during the last year, the force had to face a real danger, which peaked last August when the Al-Qaeda-linked organization Al-Nusra Front took over UN positions and kidnapped dozens of peacekeepers. The peacekeepers were later released, but many UN positions were abandoned and the observing process was dramatically reduced in the area. It is still unclear what the purpose of the interactions was and which faction of the Syrian opposition was involved. But perhaps this is a clear evidence that despite Israel's formal policy not to take sides in the Syrian civil war, some connection has been made between Israel and members of the Syrian opposition. The IDF admitted Sunday that some humanitarian assistance is being delivered to the Syrians. But as for now, the mystery surrounding the Golan Heights is just expanding.
Back with us, of course, Ali Waked and Avi Sischav. Joined in studio also by Amir Tibon, who is Israeli Walla website diplomatic correspondent. I'm going to start with you real quick about this after we touch on the cooperation. Everybody's saying, Amir, that the attack in Syria, which we've established, is not the first one. And even the Syrians are saying it's political capital for Benjamin Netanyahu. The opposition in Israel is stating that he's trying to flare up the Middle East because he's trying to win elections. Do you think that's the case?
Well, I've heard some members of Knesset in Israel say that yesterday, but I'm not sure it's the case for a number of reasons, which I think some have been discussed already in the studio. This kind of operation takes a long time to discuss, and right now the top security brass in Israel doesn't really have any incentive to allow Netanyahu this kind of attack. The chief of staff, Gantz, the chief commander of the IDF, has 2 months in his job. He doesn't owe anything to the prime minister. I don't think he would have approved this kind of attack just for political capital. That sounds a bit weird to me. And also you have to remember that the security establishment in Israel really doesn't want to flare up the situation. We saw it in Gaza when some of the right-wing ministers in the Israeli government were blaming the chief of staff for being too soft or too cautious. So I don't think this is the case here.
Okay, and really quickly, Ali and Avi, as you saw the piece, the Israeli involvement on that border, something that everybody trying to keep on taps, not only for humanitarian reasons, but which side has Israel picked?
No, it's pretty obvious that Israel is trying to pick the more pragmatist or secular opposition that operates on the east side of the Golan border. It's not that there are too many secular groups today in Syria. But bottom line, I would say that...
And who is secular? This is the question, of course.
That this is a fact that we all know for years, meaning that Israel is cooperating or working with the Syrian secular opposition. The fact is that the Israeli military censorship prevented us from publishing any kinds of indications, any kinds of information about this cooperation. But then came the UN inspectors and just published it very widely all over the international.
And a report as such, what does it do?
Israel tried to convince the international community or the main actors involved in this conflict to allow to create an isolated zone in between Syria and Israel, other than the zone that is under the control of the UNDO. 15 kilometers that, according to the Syrian, Israel hoped to create a new South Lebanon army that will be separating Israel with Syria. And this plan for the moment is not succeeding, is not convincing, is not recruiting any support from the actors. This is why Israel is increasing its support to the rebels. And as Avi mentioned, in this region of the borders, as at the other region, the secular, moderate, pragmatic opposition in Syria is losing territory and is losing impact for the radical groups.
Fascinating stuff, obviously. We are going to be watching it further on throughout the day and the week. Ali Waked, thank you for being with us. Avi Sischav, as we move on. American journalist Luke Summers died over the weekend in a botched attempt to rescue him from captivity in Yemen. Summers was kidnapped in September 2013, held by al-Qaeda affiliates. Friends and family described him as a committed journalist who sought to document the lives of ordinary people amid turmoil. Now, sadly, as we have witnessed in the course of the last few months, Summers is not an anomaly. 43 journalists were killed in the line of duty over the course of 2014, according to the CPJ, that's the Committee to Protect Journalists. If in the past press credentials offered journalists protection, recent years have seen that protection erode, with war correspondents becoming not only victims of collateral damage, but actual targets of abductions and murder. We're joined, as we said, in studio by Walla diplomatic correspondent Amir Tibon, who knows a little bit about this. And before we delve into it, let's take a look at Mandy Kogosowski's report.
My name is Luke Summers. I was born in England, but I carry American citizenship and have lived in America for most of my life. It's now been well over a year since I was kidnapped in Sana'a. Basically, I'm looking for any help that can get me out of this situation. I'm certain that my life is in danger.
33-year-old photojournalist Luke Summers is the latest victim in the string of reporters who have lost their lives in the line of duty. Summers, who traveled to Yemen following the Arab Spring to report on local life, was taken hostage by al-Qaeda militants in September 2013. He was killed on Friday during an attempted U.S. Navy SEALs rescue mission, along with South African teacher Pierre Corky, who was also held captive. While Yemenite officials claim Summers was killed during the rescue attempt, the U.S. position is somewhat different.
He was murdered during an attempt by American forces to rescue him from terrorist groups in Yemen.
The death of journalists who travel from afar to report on atrocities has hit a nerve with the public since Daniel Pearl's assassination in 2002. ISIS has thrown a spotlight on this dangerous line of work with the gruesome executions of James Foley and Stephen Sotloff earlier this year. And then there's the question of money. Citing refusal to succumb to terror, the Obama administration refused to pay the $132 million ransom demanded by the kidnappers in order to spare Foley's life. Amid unconfirmed reports that France and Spain have agreed to spend millions in order to release their own kidnapped journalists, the question is raised, should governments take responsibility for the lives of journalists, or is it a risk of the trade, and a very high one at that?
We're also joined from Ghent, Belgium, by freelance journalist and Arabist Annabel van der Berg, who spent recent years covering wars and revolutions in Egypt, Syria, and Iraq. Annabel, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, thank you for being us. You know, this is $1 million question. I'm going to start asking you first. You're going to stay with us for the discussion. And then, Amir, should governments actually intervene and try to save journalists who have become, as you know, as we've witnessed, not just collateral damage, but actual pawns in the recent wars in the Middle East?
Yeah, well, of course, if I can decide, I would say yes. Of course, they should help journalists to save journalists actually by paying these ransoms. But on the other hand, we also know that if governments start doing so, journalists will even be more targeted, and more journalists will get abducted because they would know that they would get money for it.
And not only, I mean, I think that's, you know, it's an ethical question that we face as journalists. You know, if and when we get into situations as such, Amir Tibon in studio with me. I think between the three of us, both Annabel, myself, and you, we have done things that, you know, many people think, why the heck do that? Why is it important? Maybe we should explain to the audience first. To go to places which at this point have become, I mean, really a death trap for people in our profession.
Well, I can only say it from my point of view as an Israeli journalist who has visited Syria, for example, and other places in the region, that I think it's important to give my readers, my viewers, an independent Israeli report from the ground. Because for Israeli viewers, what's happening in Syria is so important. It's important for the entire world, but for us, really, it's happening right next to us, on the next door neighbor's porch, really. And we have to show our viewers what's happening there. So that was my incentive for doing it. And it has stayed my incentive for reporting from whenever I go, because I want to give my readers an Israeli perspective, an Israeli report, something that really deals with the questions that are important to us.
Understanding, though, knowing that in the case that if you fall into the wrong hands, you will become the biggest pawn ever. You know that.
Well, you know, I have to tell you, Ellen, you've done dangerous things just as much as myself. You did Iraq and Egypt and
Afghanistan.
And you have to know always that I think for the Israeli government, this is not even a dilemma. You know, other governments, Europeans, the United States, might ask themselves, should we intervene or not? I don't see any situation in which the Israeli government would have any leverage in this kind of situation. So really, I don't think that the question that you asked about governments is even relevant in this case.
No, yes, but I'm saying now straight to the point to your personal issue. I think it's important to give the Israeli perspective and see those places rather than the television of commentators that we're living here, people who've never been and are talking about the story. But do you understand that, you know, if you, who also has a different, we're looking at Sotloff, you know, who also has a different,
who was also an Israeli citizen.
Israeli American, exactly, that you can become an incredible pawn in this.
Well, I think you know it when you go to do the story and you try to calculate how to avoid it. And for Israelis, places that are not dangerous for many other journalists can be just as dangerous. I did a report last year from Malaysia, for example, which is not a dangerous country at all. I was there to report about the missing plane, that whole amazing mystery that we haven't still discovered the answers to. And while for every other journalist in the world, I think it was not a dangerous place to be in, for me, and I was the only Israeli journalist there covering it, it was, because it's a country that is very anti-Israeli, some would say even anti-Semitic, and it's not a nice place to be as an Israeli.
And speaking
but then again, I wanted to bring my readers a good report about what's happening there. People were fascinated by the story. They wanted to know more, and it was important for me, and I calculated that while there is danger, it's, you know, the risk is...
The idea of having to do it is right, but Annabel, I want to ask you, because I spent time in Tahrir, and I spent 17 years traveling Iraq and being there, you know, for a year on. Tahrir is the thing that broke me. I know you've been in Egypt, not because I'm also, you know, of Jewish descent and whatnot. It's because, it was so dangerous for women to be in that square. And it's very dangerous for women in certain situations in the Arab world, which, goes to the point of why continue doing that when there's nothing to protect you, when the essence of our profession no longer maintains that credential that, tells people to stop because a journalist is there to tell a story.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have to tell the story, because if you don't tell the story, then these things will happen more and more. So, as you say, Tahrir is indeed a very dangerous place for women, not only for journalists, but for women in general.
Yes.
The UN has conducted a study that 99% of the Egyptian women are being harassed on a daily basis.
Definitely.
So.
Yeah.
It's a very huge and a very big problem. So, of course, if you're a journalist, you're targeted by sexual harassment as well. And it is a problem. It is a problem that I'm facing on a daily basis as well when I'm walking in the streets of Egypt. But on the other hand, if you're staying away from it and you're not reporting on it, then there's no reports anymore, and then it's not known anymore what is really going on in Egypt, and then it will even get worse.
No, it will even get worse, and I think that's what people, don't understand. You want to say before I'm going to...
It will get worse, but there is a real question of, has the press made anything better? And I think one of the reasons for what we're seeing right now...
That's the thing is when we look at Daesh, and that's my question to you, when we look at Daesh, because journalists are a great PR tool for them. I mean, one of the problems here is that we play into the hands of their incredible, let's face it,
media,
online campaign.
Yeah, great campaign.
So why go do that? Isn't that something, if we look also at, there's a journalist, I don't think we have time to show it, that they've actually, that is in captivity right now, that has to do fake reports for them. I mean, there are major ethical issues here.
Well, and then there is always the question of, besides what you just mentioned, which is very important, I think one of the reasons for the really outburst of violence against journalists in the last 2 years is that people in the Arab world specifically are tired of the media, and they have been really disappointed by the media's role in the Arab Spring, or however you would call it. Some would say an Islamic winter,
autumn,
maybe.
yes.
Yeah, because it seems that the media didn't really cause the change that people were building on it. And I can tell you from my perspective, when I was in Syria in December 2012, the people I interviewed basically told me, we hope that when people see this report, wherever it's published, this will cause the governments to interfere on our behalf. But after so many journalists have visited Syria and talked to people there and described the suffering that they were going through, and then so many other journalists went to the refugee camps in Turkey and in Jordan.
And just last week we've marked 200,000 people
exactly.
dead.
And nothing has changed for the better. So people have been disillusioned with the media.
No, very valid and depressing point. Annabelle also with us. Sadly, all the time we have. I want to thank you very much, Annabelle. You keep safe when you go back to the region. Amir, my God, find another profession. I'm just kidding, but thank you so much for being with us. When we get back, after the news, we are going to discuss China becoming the largest economy in the world, surpassing the United States. Have the Chinese begun walking already, so to speak? First, the news, though. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be on this December
8th.
Thank you. Yes.
So it's automatic.
We're automatic completely with my human clock, Tony Grant, who is here to tell us the news you missed while scanning the headlines, and always keep us in check. Or Nahari in studio as well. Channel 1 senior foreign affairs correspondent, who is our actually Ruthie Sinai today. Just kidding. Yes, keeping us in check as well. Tony, what do we have?
Well, here's a little headline which has a lot of significance from Haaretz, which is basically, to paraphrase, the Knesset is expected to basically fade away or dissolve today.
This is it.
This is most likely going to be put through today. So again, this domestically here in Israel, this is something that is pretty much at the top of
the agenda, and I think will dominate our agenda for the next several months. That's for sure. The interesting bit about that headline is that I think they also today, am I right in saying it, that before they dissolve the Knesset, they're going to really quickly vote on the foreign workers law. I think it's just to try and get that under the radar, to see how many people they can kick out of the country. But there, I said it. Yes, don't quote me on that.
Speaking of a controversial story, and that it's actually not that far away, Al Arabiya was reporting that ISIS has, according to their headline, seized parts of Syria's Deir ez-Zor airbase. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but Anyway, this is something that report.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's been corroborated by everyone else at this point, but again, it's pretty interesting to note that this is heating up the ante over in that part of Syria.
If indeed true, if indeed this is corroborated in second source, then here we have Daesh, ISIS, however they're called this week, taking more chunks of Syria at this point. We know they control about a third of Iraq, I believe, and I can't stop thinking how the entire, the Western world with its smart bombs and the airstrikes and whatnot cannot seem to stop this group.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, if this is correct, this is a huge deal. And also on the human aspect of this, the Times of Israel reported that Pope Francis had said over the weekend that Christians are being driven from the Mideast, and it was a video message to a visiting French cardinal who was in the city of Erbil in northern Iraq, where not just thousands, but basically apparently hundreds of thousands of Christians had to flee to after ISIS basically took over Mosul. So again, the numbers when you think about it of the refugees there, it's quite staggering.
It's staggering.
And the concern for Christians here is something that I think is probably underreported. So Pope Francis, of course, is about as vocal, as high visibility of a figure as you can get to say, hey, we've got a crisis here.
No, definitely. And sadly, nobody seems to be listening to anybody of power at this point.
Not enough.
Yeah.
Responding to various military situations and threats, present and potentially future, Britain is going to be opening a new naval base in Bahrain. So, permanent military base under a landmark deal to increase security in the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, that is.
Oh, good. More foreign troops in the Middle East.
More big boats.
Yes, that seems to be going so well in the last decade.
Yeah, well, anyway.
Well, you have to be consistent. A minute ago, you said how the Western world does not stop ISIS, and now you're complaining about foreign troops in the Middle East.
Because it's not a complaint, it's an observation.
It's an observation.
Yes.
And it's the chicken and the egg. And thank you for keeping me. What caused what is what I'm wondering.
But I have to say this, the Americans are going to have it bigger. Americans have bigger boats. There's one coming down the pike, the Gerald Ford. It's going to be 3 football fields long and 25 stories high. And a Saudi-born, not a cruise ship.
It's not a cruise ship, yeah.
No, it's some kind of an aircraft carrier. Interestingly, though, big story broke on Friday. A guy in Virginia, where this thing is being built, a Saudi-born individual was working for the Navy. Apparently, was arrested for leaking secrets about this frigate to Egypt.
Really?
Yes, and on Friday he both wore pink and cried at the hearing. It's interesting stuff going on there. I mean, not to minimize the gravity of it.
I have to say that line again. And in court, he both wore pink and cried.
The article says it. I'm just conveying it. But yeah, I mean, very fashionably dressed spy.
Yes. Can you blame me? I have no fashion sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, there was a sting operation. He leaked to the federal authorities involved, exact areas of where to hit the ship with a missile if someone would be so interested. So yeah, bad stuff. Bad stuff. He was caught, and
now clearly he doesn't know what he's doing. I'm just looking at that attire and the actions. It's all,
I don't know.
Yes.
Interesting story considering all the events in the region. Daily Star Beirut reports that over the weekend, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov met with Nasrallah, Hezbollah chief, in, somewhere in Lebanon.
Wow.
In the company of the Russian ambassador to Lebanon, and they were there to discuss regional issues. It's interesting timing on this. Again,
I mean, it's fascinating stuff. Listen, there's something that people in the land of Israel, I think, when it comes to both the administration and the upper echelon, do not realize it. I mean, Hezbollah does sit in the parliament, but to go as far as to sit with Nasrallah. And you being a representative of a Western country, a country that is an organization that is slaughtered by the United States as one of the top terror organizations.
Exactly. And one wonders if the American embassy was apprised of this meeting before, if anybody cared what the Americans thought about that. I don't know.
Probably not, and maybe it's even some kind of a baffanculo, theorizing. Yeah.
Speaking of clarifications, Turkey's Erdogan wants to clarify that the new presidential palace there in Ankara has 1,150 rooms, not just 1,000. So, Just in case.
We're just saying.
Just saying.
In case there was a confusion.
And also that no expense should really be spared when national prestige is the order of the day.
Says Erdogan. Nice, standing there. Is that him? Was that him at the stairs?
That was him at the stairs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad we clarified that.
Big story in Washington, D.C. Senator Dianne Feinstein, who was in charge of the Senate Intelligence Committee, is fighting to release the CIA torture report before the GOP takes over Congress. Very controversial here. The timing of this is being put into question by John Kerry because he's saying that you put this report out now and you're going to endanger the lives of diplomats, American diplomats overseas. But Feinstein wants to get the report out because it needs to get out. It's talking about torture under the Bush presidency.
The Bush president was a huge issue when it comes to things were very easy to pass when it comes to techniques that are incredibly controversial right after 9/11. But yes.
And again, it could drop as soon as tomorrow, Tuesday. But we'll see if that actually happens.
But important to watch. Tony, thank you. I've locked you in. Stay with us for the next one.
Thanks.
On to our next topic. Statistics compiled by the International Monetary Fund show that the United States is no longer the largest economy in the world, giving up the illustrious title to China. With years of rapid growth, China's productive prowess has eclipsed that of the United States, producing $17.6 trillion in goods and services compared to the $17.4 trillion for the United States. And to hear more about it, we're very happy to be joined in studio by Channel 1's Foreign Affairs Senior Editor Owen Nahari. Good morning to you.
Morning to you.
Let's take a look at Ron Friedman's report about this massive change in world economy.
New figures released by the International Monetary Fund indicate that China has surpassed the U.S. as the world's biggest economy. The numbers show that by the end of the year, China will produce $17.6 trillion in terms of goods and services, compared to $17.4 trillion for the U.S. Using another measure of economic strength, statistics show that China now accounts for 16.5% of the global economy when measured in real purchasing power, or PPP terms, compared with 16.3% for the U.S. The numbers highlight China's staggering growth in recent years. A bit over a decade ago, the U.S. produced almost 3 times as much as China did. But in economics, numbers can be tricky, and not everyone agrees that we are really at that watershed moment. At market exchange rates, the American economy is still almost double the size of China's, meaning it may now be the world's largest, but it's still not the richest. With GDP per capita less than a quarter of the U.S. levels, the Chinese public still has a ways to go before they begin feeling their country's economic clout.
Joined in studio by Oren Nahari, Senior Foreign Affairs Editor for Channel 1. There's an old saying that many years ago, that the Chinese don't need weapons. They just need to start walking if they want to control the world. Have they started walking?
Long ago, yes. And I want to remind you, there are all pros and cons about it. I want to remind you, first of all, that the United States still is the only country on the list of the 10 most populous countries and the 10 most prosperous countries. Okay. The only one. All the other countries with huge numbers of people, like India, like Indonesia, like Nigeria, they are not doing that well. On the other hand, perhaps this weekend...
This is huge, though. I mean...
It's not only huge. Perhaps this is the day when the 21st century started, really. When the 20th century, the American century, officially ended and the Chinese century started. Not only that, it is the first time in more than 200 years that a non-white, I know this is racist, but you know what I mean, non-white superpower is leading the world. And it's not going to stop there. And it's doing it much, much faster than ever perceived. I mean, look at it. 40 years ago, they were grappling with the Cultural Revolution. 50 years ago, it was the huge leap forward. 40 million Chinese starved to death. In 1962, they had wars with the Soviet Union. Nobody could have believed it. So first and foremost, can it be true? And what will happen? Because after all, we are talking not only about the present, but on the future. Let me remind you, 25 years ago, everybody talked. There were a huge number of books, hundreds of books, about the Asian superpower going to conquer the world, how the United States will be a colony of that Asian superpower, but it was not China, it was Japan. Everybody talked about Japan ascending, and it didn't happen because of numbers. Now the numbers are different, everything is different, and they still have a much many problems, but I presume after that I'll present the other side, because there is another side why perhaps China will not be able to hold this position.
No, speaking of books on the other side, we're also joined via Skype from London by journalist and author of When China Rules the World, which apparently is now, that was just translated also into Hebrew. Martin Jacques, good morning to you, Martin. Thank you so much for being with us. Has the Chinese century begun?
Sorry?
Are we seeing the beginning of the Chinese century?
Well, of course. I mean, this year the Chinese economy has overtaken the size of the American economy. In 1980, the Chinese economy was 1/20th of the size of the American economy. The IMF projects that by 2019, the Chinese economy will be 20% larger than the American economy. Going forwards, there are quite solid projections that by 2030, the Chinese economy will be twice the size of the American economy. I mean, this is an historical shift of unprecedented proportions.
And what does that mean for the future? If in your book title, When China Rules the World, how do you perceive the world is going to look, let's say, 30, 40 years from now, with China at the lead?
Well, of course, nothing is certain. Things can change, but I think that one should expect China's rise to continue. There are things that could make it more difficult. There are things that could slow it down. But relatively speaking, I expect it to continue. And in 30 to 40 years' time, well, that's quite a long time, but 30 to 40 years' time, I would expect the Chinese economy to be easily the largest economy in the world. And the way ahead in size of the American economy, although technologically China would have made a lot of progress, but still the American economy in its technological capacity, I think, would be more advanced. And we will see around the world China rising as a global power. I'm cautious about calling. In fact, I would not call China a global power now, except in economic terms, except in kind of economic grunt. But we will see over the next 20, 30 years the rise of China as what should we call it, all-round comprehensive global power, politically, culturally, and so on. And you can already see, if you look at the world today, you can see in different regions of the world China becoming a really important player. East Asia, I mean, what's happening in East Asia is essentially now the most important economic region in the world, the largest economic region in the world, is becoming China-centric. And it used to be American-centric. If you look at Africa, China is a very important player in Africa. If you look at what's going to happen in Central Asia, China is going to become a really important player in Central Asia. If you look at Latin America, Brazil's largest trading partner now is China. That's the first, that for over a century it's been the United States.
Yeah, Mr. Jacques, hold on. Yeah, thank you for that. And you had something to add,
yes.
Nahari?
On the other hand, first of all, we can continue that China and Russia are in a pact together, and maybe even looking ahead, maybe Russia sort of a vassal state to China because of the numbers of population, etc., etc. On the other hand, close to 2 million Chinese students learn in the United States and not vice versa. Yeah. The language of the world is English. The culture, but basically Chinese, speaking Chinese, and every other person in the world, his next language is, the second language is English. Hollywood and the American culture still dominate the world, not to mention in military terms, and you can argue that perhaps the use of military brought the United States the decline faster than before, but still the United States expenditure is more than the next 14 countries together, and they have huge in military presence and huge military power compared to China or any other country. And of course, 30 years from now,
yeah,
who knows?
Who knows? 30 years from now, that's the million-dollar question. But Mr. Jacques from London, thank you for joining us. Or Nahari, same to you. When we get back, a closer look on how Israeli minorities are represented in the Israeli media. Stay with us. First, like in every morning, the news. Welcome back. It is still Monday, December 8th, 2014. This is still the morning edition. Last I checked, I'm still Ella V, and thank you for staying with us. Now, to our next topic. Israeli Arabs make up around 20% of the population in Israel, but when it comes to their depiction in the media, statistics find that they only make up a touch over 1%, usually in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. A similar situation exists with the ultra-Orthodox minority, which, though Jewish, is largely separate from the mainstream Israeli society. We're very happy to be joined in studio by two people who want to change that reality. Nicole Hod, Deputy Director of ANU, in Hebrew that means us, and journalist and activist Tzipi Arom. Good morning to the two of you.
Good morning.
Now, and via Skype, of course, we're also joined by Hand in Hand community organizer Laila Najjar Amori, who will be joining us in a minute. But I want to start with you, Nicole, because you're the Deputy Director of ANU. The need for an organization as such is why? What is the representation of both Arabs and ultra-Orthodox Jews?
I think in any democracy, it's crucial to have diverse media. It's important to have the perspectives of the entire population and for the public to enjoy new creativity, perspectives, knowledge of everyone, Arabs included in this society.
And not only that, I mean, I think that people will argue, not against you, but to you, is that, no, we have, minorities in prime time. I always find, and I'm going to say it in a very controversial thing right now, and maybe, I'll turn to you, Tzipi, that in primetime shows in Israel, for example, such as that are worldwide known, it's formats like MasterChef or, Big Brother, which here is, a huge success. You always find, like, the token minority. You have, your token Arab, you have your token ultra-Orthodox person, but you will not see them in other places, right?
Right, and also when you're talking about those reality shows, there will also, a lot of times they would be the awkward people, right, not those who represent us seriously, and then it's kind of a, funny issue instead of making it very serious. And, we are normal people, just like all of the other people in this country, but since you don't see us, we are not represented well, so then it's a problem because you don't see an ultra-Orthodox news anchor, for example, and it's not like there aren't women who can do that. You can see us covering media in things that are not related to ultra-Orthodox people, almost not. You wouldn't find people in all the boards of the media, big media systems in Israel. So we're totally misrepresented
in media boards in Israel.
Yes, that's
or
another
around
problem.
the world, if I may say so myself. No, I think that you probably have it, in both cases, and also Lila, who'll be joining us shortly, is just being, of a minority community and a woman, which is, hard to begin with. So what is ANU trying to do? Because as Tzipi Arom just mentioned, and you're a journalist and an activist, I think it's very much that also. If there's a war in this country on panels, on security panels, usually we'll see a bulk of men, right? Maybe you see a woman anchor, but you'll never see a woman on the panel. You'll never see a minority on the panel. You're not going to see an Arab on the panel. How do you change it? How is your organization proposing to change that?
So one of ANU's main objectives is to diversify the public discourse, and what we established was, on one hand, what we call...
That almost sounds like we're going to bring peace to the Middle East.
Well, yes, but you know what? We're making change. We started with what we call the Women's Media Center, talking about women. We created, on one hand, a group of activists, women journalist activists that are trying to change things, doing monitoring, making sure that women are participating. And we created a website that has a list of all the women experts, so that whenever news entities need an interviewee, they can have it in the, right away. And we did the same thing with the Arab community. So we have a website called the Arab Media Center, and we have over 100 experts. And the idea is when there's an issue that has to do with science, technology, arts, education, that's when it's a good opportunity to listen to what individual Arabs, experts on these issues have to say.
But not just in those situations. And what if there's another war, in this region, another operation, such there was one over the course of the summer, Protective Edge. But wouldn't it be incredibly hard to put, Israeli Arabs on as panelists in that?
And I think that any democracy deserves to take the risk and bring other voices and hear what people have to say, even if it's different from what we have to do. Because I think the public has the right to make a decision. Maybe we don't agree with them, but at least we have to listen out. I think it would make things a lot better if we can listen to what the other has to say about the way they're feeling. And it's also important to say that when we bring an Arab expert to the news station, he's reflecting his own individual vision. He's not saying what all the Arabs think. So we also have to be very careful with generalizations.
No, incredibly careful. I mean, there's some will argue that there are some military correspondents in the Israeli media that always bring their personal agenda into the mix. And I just hinted at that to those who understand what I'm talking about. But, we're also joined, Tzipi and Nicole, we're also joined on the phone by hand-in-hand community organizer Laila Najjar Amouri, who's on your website, right?
That's right.
Laila, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you?
We're good, we're good. Just quickly to you as we follow this on, you also received some type of kind of training on how to bring your point across in front of a camera by this organization, ANU, correct?
Yes.
And how did that go about?
I think it was very useful. It's the first time that in my life I know how to look to the other, to the camera, how to sit, how to use my hand, and to make focus on my words, not on my clothes or my appearance.
And
so it was very useful.
And Laila, not only that, I can assure you, from where I'm sitting here, everybody can be on camera, seriously, everybody. But stay with us. Tzipi, I want to ask you, the misconception, the misconception about the ultra-Orthodox community within Israeli media, within Israeli press. Do you think that joining in on the discourse is something that's going to help? Or is that something that, when it comes to the Israeli society, deep down inside, we're also divided that nothing else is, it's not going to move forward?
People are not stupid, and they don't want that to be told what to think. So when you bring them other voices, they listen. I'm part of an organization called DOSIM.
Dosim in Hebrew, I'll explain, is it's almost a slang word. It's a slang word about ultra-Orthodox people.
And we have a website. The web is a very good tool today to bring our voices out. So we're a group of young people who decided that we wouldn't be silent anymore about these misconceptions that the people in Israel get about the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox society, because of the way it's represented and it's brought to the media. All the items, you would always find negative items instead of good items. Right. And also, lots of times, they wouldn't check the facts. So I have this website. We have this website. And we, first of all, respond. If you write something against us, be sure.
We will respond.
Yes. Okay. Also, in a lot of media boards today, they know us. So they would refer to us. A lot of newspapers know us today, websites, websites. So if they need a response for something, they would refer to us. At least we would respond. Sometimes we could influence and we could bring our own items. So then we make the change. It's not about if we could make the change. It's done. It's happening. There's still a big way to go, but it's happening. So first of all, if you bring it out, it happens. Then the other thing is that if you would see people, ultra-Orthodox people around these tables, but like as journalists, not like me.
Then you look at them at that. I mean, listen, I would like to be the most optimistic person, and to quote Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. But that said, just to play devil's advocate, and sadly all the time, Nicole, I'm asking you, is this working? Are people turning to you and be honest? Because I think, the same question that I asked Tzipi, we are witnessing a time within the Israeli society of major divisions, of divisions seated so deeply that, it seems like it's going to need, 17 tractors to uplift this. Is it working?
I want to say it's working. It's definitely working. The moment that journalists start understanding the importance in doing this check before they start a new item, and they think, am I being creative enough and diverse enough and diversifying? Am I bringing enough voices? And then they reach out to us. Of course, whenever there's a war, it brings us back 30 years. Okay. And so it is a very difficult job. We're also doing it with women. We might say that with women it's easier and it's working. With Arabs it's going to take longer. But I think that if our society grows up watching Arabs talking about science and breakthroughs and cure for cancer, and there are these experts here in Israel developing these issues in our universities, then it's going to be very important for us to be able to
then possibly
approach
maybe
them.
it will affect us as societies as well. Yeah.
Yes.
And for coexistence. Optimistic item of the day and the week. Sadly, all the time we have. Lila, thank you for being with us. Of course, Tzipi as well, and Nicole, as we move on. Thank you. And now it's the time for the breaking news of the day, the most important information you're ever going to get, ever. The web review.
Not that when it's given to overstatement.
Nothing to overstate. The web review, the spiral viral that is the web review with Tony Grant. Yes.
Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about North Korea, because North Korea has officially denied that they are behind the Sony Pictures hack. Yeah. So, I mean, interesting.
Which means they did it. No.
Well, interestingly, they step back from accepting responsibility, but then there was an official statement, and they're kind of coy. They said the hack might have been the result of the righteous deed, not righteous dude, righteous deed of the supporters and sympathizers of the People's Republic of Korea. So, and we know there's many supporters and sympathizers in Hollywood.
Tons, and they're actually, who are also looking to vacation in that country.
Yes, they have a new tourist website. So lots of interesting things on that front.
I'm glad that's been clarified, because that could have been World War III.
Yeah, well, North Korea, it's always keeping it interesting. On a different note altogether, music. There's a lot of buzz about the upcoming Whitney Houston biopic, which is going to be...
There is one?
Coming in January. Yeah, it's starring Yaya DaCosta. I think we have a little clip.
We have a clip?
Yeah,
do we have a clip
stuff.
of this?
Well, if we don't...
Well, no, we do it. See, here we go. It's coming up.
Oh.
I'm getting mad. You're making a mistake. Go away! Open the door, Whitney.
Whitney, you need to protect the voice.
I'm a grown woman now, and I'm going my own way. It's never gonna work, Bobby. You know that. What do you want? To destroy.
Sorry, I was thinking.
It's when I join in there, but...
Yeah, who is that?
It's Yaya DaCosta.
Of course.
I don't really know much of it, but anyway.
No, but if ever, I'm traumatized. I grew up on Whitney Houston.
Yeah,
okay?
it's almost...
This is, I want to dance with somebody is... the story of my life.
So many great hits.
Yeah.
And of course, talking about her marriage to Bobby Brown and how that was a huge complicating factor.
That was probably the line of, "You're making a mistake." Yes. Okay.
So it's going to be airing on Lifetime. So small screen.
Oh, it's a Lifetime movie.
Yeah, but it could still be good.
Yes.
Yeah. Just because.
It's still going to be good.
It was a glamorous life that she led. And speaking of glamour on a different note, hotels charging for Wi-Fi.
No.
Yeah.
So tacky.
It's so annoying.
So annoying.
Okay.
I know. I'm with you on that. I mean, this is the 21st century.
Yeah, it should be free, right? So this hotel in France, the glitzy Majestic Barrière in Cannes.
That's a Majestic?
Yes.
Okay.
They're charging, get this, apparently 300 euros a night for Wi-Fi. Yeah. For the fast connection. It's only 7 euros for the slow connection. Or 9 €9.
You're kidding, right?
9, I should say. No, this is according to Teller.
300 euros for the fast.
Well, it's a glamorous setting, it's Cannes. But listen to this.
But then the difference, I'm wondering how slow is the slow connection?
Escargot speed.
If it's 223 euros less.
Listen, here's the best part.
Yes.
When a hotel spokeswoman was asked if guests are ever surprised by their high Wi-Fi charges, she replied, "Of course."
And we don't care.
No brainer. But
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, nice.
But again, I think when you travel these days, I think you kind of expect free Wi-Fi.
I actually feel, when you get to a city, you expect Wi-Fi to jump up.
I mean, you can spend the time on the hotel's website, booking room service. It's a good generator of revenue
so maybe
for
they
the
want to
hotel.
lock you in, like you're never going to leave and you can never get your check out if you don't get this Wi-Fi.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
New book about Jackie Kennedy is out. Yes, another one.
I know. That was my next line. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Speaking of glamour, basically the book is saying that she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, Yeah, okay, no brainer. But what they're trying what they're trying to say is that by putting a label on it, actually, it would explain a lot of her sort of at the time seemingly
that's why she
erratic
married a
behavior.
Greek man?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
That's why she moved on.
That it was her way of dealing with the trauma was to marry the Greek man.
A Greek man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like jumping from the frying pan into the fire,
Yeah,
right?
some people say I had PTSD and I just married a short German, but just whatever. Okay,
Well,
yes.
Anyway, good reading.
And last one, sadly.
Bill Cosby's shine is dimming on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Someone took a purple marker and wrote the R word on there. And was taken off. But again, look, I mean, this is
this is
just
getting
escalating
nastier by the second.
by the day. Yeah.
By the day. No. And you know what? Yeah. Well, I mean, this is something we're going to be touching on in the next several weeks.
Yeah,
Tony,
big stuff.
thank you. When we get back, everything there is to know about the history of the World Cup mascots. Yes, fascinating stuff. You must stay with us. I-24 News Morning Edition coming up first the headlines. Good morning. Thank you for staying with us. I-24 News Morning Edition on December 8th with this lovely view behind me and a much more beautiful girl next to me. Ronnie Stav, America.
Should come here every morning.
Exactly. You see, I'm
get
here
a
to
little bit of
boost
this
your
and then-
self-esteem. Culture correspondent. For us, contributor. Yes. What do you have for us?
Well, the first thing is this ecological project that I think it combines everything that's wonderful and horrible about fashion. That's how I looked at that.
That's the way to describe fashion.
In general, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So a new thing is happening. David and Claire Hyatt, they're a couple that are living in Cardigan, that is a market town in West Wales. Now, they had the biggest jeans factory in Britain, and they employed 400 locals. Now, almost 2 years ago, they decided to outsource the production to Morocco, and overnight, 10% of the locals were jobless.
Right.
So now, what are we going to do?
And it's their fault because they went cheaper and they took work from.
So this couple decided to create this new jeans brand called Hute, and they are working into breaking the jeans before giving them to customers. So basically, they created 50 pairs of jeans, and they gave it away to breakers. Those breakers wore the jeans every day for the past 8 months. They just got them all back, and today they're going to auction all of those pairs.
To make sure I'm not wearing it. What's it called?
No, they washed it.
Okay, they washed it, but they're breaking. Yeah.
They washed it after those breakers broke the jeans for the past 8 months, and they're going to auction them tonight, and they're going to give 20% of the final sale to each breaker that took.
Took the time to break
the jeans.
Your pants in.
Yeah, but it's creating sustainability. They're not washing the jeans. Part of the process of creating the jeans into this worn out look that we all love is to wash them in the river in Cardigan, and that creates a huge ecological.
Them or just washing them?
No, just washing them in the factory. That's how they used to
break it in.
And that
how
created.
How long do you break a pair of pants in? Does one know? Does the article say?
Apparently 8 months. That's what they're gonna do now.
So you're getting used jeans.
Yes, you're getting used jeans.
You're getting used jeans. Exactly.
Absolutely.
You're something that you're getting secondhand jeans.
But you're not. You're helping the people of Cardigan, and you're helping the salmon fish of Cardigan that are not having blue water anymore.
Regev of the sports magazine, who's about to nod. Would you wear used jeans?
Cardigan something.
Cardigan something.
I would cardigan something.
You would cardigan something?
Absolutely.
No, because it's horrible. Because I think the next thing is that they're outsourcing. Factories to other countries, and the people. What's next? Meals that somebody chewed for you.
But that's the issue with this. That's the issue with our society. We've talked about it in Black Friday that we know about people that are paying other people to stand in line. So all of these supposedly very weird jobs that people just do for you something that you're supposed to.
Because society has become lazy.
Because society have become lazy, and people will just
I don't want to do anything.
Yeah,
I want
If you have the money, people
I like
will chew
my
your
jeans
food
to
if
be
you want.
unworn. Oh my God, yes.
But
Okay.
you know, it's a wonderful initiative. They created something that we as customers want, and made it into something that is ecological and.
No, I'm shocked that that's what customers want, or maybe the other thing would be not to outsource the work to a different country.
Well,
there's that too. Yes, but it's
there's
cheaper.
that.
There's
but
that. Yes.
We'll just say hi in Morocco and ask them how do they feel about it.
Moving on.
Moving on. So the couch gag before Christmas, the couch gag of The Simpsons, is out. So
It's
The
out?
Simpsons, it's out. You don't know what couch gag
I have no
is.
idea what
Let's
it is.
talk about it.
Yes.
Let's talk about it for a moment. First of all, here we go.
Let's take a look.
This is the couch gag. So as you can see, everything is Christmassy-like, and we have the Frozen gag. So here's Frozen. You probably know it. So we have the Frozen moment, and here's Olaf as Homer. He is eating the carrot. That's fantastic. And we're done.
I am so glad, though, that they took a stab at Frozen.
Yeah, so every episode of The Simpsons, they have a couch gag. That means that throughout this little clip in the beginning, it's the same one, but as they are on the couch, something else is happening. And it depends on how long the episode is. If it's too short, then you do the gag a little bit longer.
No. I remember
whatever.
The Simpsons back when I watched TV 2005.
Oh, that's
Yes,
wonderful.
yeah, that was the last time.
So you could have seen that the couch gag varies every episode.
Was there a TV in 2005? Supposedly. Wow. Yeah. I'm
But
embarrassed.
people didn't break your jeans in 2005.
Yeah.
That was actually for you to do.
So much has changed.
So much have changed.
Yeah.
So they created the Christmas couch gag. As you can see, it's all full of Christmassy moments, and then at the end, there's the Frozen moment, which is just fantastic.
No, it's fantastic.
Just
And I think, with all my love to every child in the world, because that movie just nobody hates it. Everybody loves
Everybody loves it.
I'm so over it. Yeah. If I hear, do you want to build a snowman? Once again, yeah. Okay.
You're done.
I'm done.
You're done.
There, I said that. Mother of the year, right?
I think they felt the same way.
Yes.
I have a feeling the Simpsons creators felt the same. Yeah, they
God
shared
bless
the
the
same.
Simpsons. And
the 57th annual Grammy Award. We know we've talked about it. It will
the
air.
award season is coming around the corner. Right.
And the Grammy will air on February 8th. But we had a very Grammy Christmas that we've talked about. That they created this pre-show to the show to announce the nominees. Yeah. So that happened, and of course Beyonce is the queen.
Yes.
Of life in general. She's very
Oh my
wonderful.
God.
Here's
Unstoppable.
Yeah, she is unstoppable, and she's so unstoppable that she just beat the record of the female artist that got the most nominees. So she has 53 nominees. She Dolly Parton had 47, and now Beyonce is ruling with 53 nominees.
That woman's unstoppable. It's impossible to dislike her when she looks so good.
No, it's really impossible.
Yeah.
She just nabbed 3 awards in the 2014 VMAs this past August, and now we'll see how many she'll get this time. She has 6 nominees in this current one.
6 nominees in this one.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Between her and Zuckerberg, they kind of rule the world in many ways. Pretty much. Yes. I'm glad you're jumping in here.
Music and Facebook.
There you go. Single ladies and Facebook. Yes. And one last one.
Yes. And okay, after J.J. Abrams decided to switch universe and leave Star Trek 3, we had writer and producer Roberto Orci that took over the job. And now it looks like things are taking another turn. And Orci is not going to be directing it anymore and is only going to produce it. So we are not sure what's happening next. There's a lot of speculation.
It's not confusing to me that this is news because I found out, Trekkies around the world are devastated, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Trekkies around the world.
They were devastated when they were saying that...
when J.J. Abrams pulled out.
And also that Orci is going to be the one that's directing it because... Orci went off on fans' criticism of the movie, of the last movie of Star Trek on the comment board. So basically the fans are not big fans of Orci at all anymore.
And listen, I mean, the important bit about this is that Trekkies are scary. You don't want to mess with the Trekkies.
No. It's true, but looks like someone messed with them, and look what happened next.
Look what happens next, exactly. Yeah. Which is the perfect time to move to our resident Trekkie. You're a Trekkie, aren't you?
Yes, of course. I do know what Trekkie is. Of course.
The crazy people who go to conventions in Nevada wearing, with Spock ears. Wearing the clothes.
I can see myself.
Yeah, some of them even going to work.
Just like the Christmas gag, we should all come one day.
Yes.
As Trekkies and one day as Christmas.
You're fired.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Yes, sorry. My God, it's Monday. That's my excuse. Jonathan Regev, host of the sports magazine that you watch daily on I-24 News, is here with anything and everything we need to know for your upcoming shows.
Exactly, and we begin with mascots. Yes.
Don't sound too excited. I love mascots.
I do too. Every big tournament has a mascot. The next big tournament is Euro 2016, which will be held in France in just under 2 years. The mascot was chosen a few weeks ago. Now it finally has a name. What is the name?
What is the name?
What is the name?
What is the name? Let's
Wait for it.
Let's find out.
Let's watch the report.
The mascot for Euro 2016 has just been named. Between the choice of Golix, Dribblu, or Super Victor, internet users made their voice heard and picked Super Victor as the name of the mascot that will be the representative at the upcoming competition in France. Before Super Victor, dozens of mascots have been featured throughout history, with a more or less happy feel. Friendly creatures that are meant to embody major sporting events for dozens of years. The first World Cup mascot was at the 1966 World Cup in England and was one of the first mascots to be associated with a major sporting competition. World Cup Willie is a lion, a typical symbol of the United Kingdom, wearing a Union flag jersey. Since then, every World Cup has its own mascot, which is mainly oriented to kids, and they market it to be sold as a playful doll, magnet, or even keychain. Juanito was a little boy wearing a Mexican sombrero at the 1970 World Cup in Mexico. And then the 5 fuwas, used during the Beijing Olympic in 2008, to Fuleco Armadillo, which ignited the last World Cup in Brazil. These icons display the characteristics of their country of origin. Futix was the mascot the last time France hosted a big international event. He was the emblem of the 1998 World Cup, and he inspired the media. The blue rooster is the symbol of success, but also seen by many as a symbol of those who are not a true football lover. The mascots also reflect the evolution of society. In 2010, Wenlock and Mendeville were presented to the public in London. One was dedicated to the Olympic Summer Games, while the other was devoted to the Paralympic Games. This year, all the mascots of the Olympic Games gathered to welcome the newcomers, the figures of the Rio 2016 Olympic Games.
The idea of inviting the mascots of other Olympic Games is precisely to create emotion, because adults, young people, and especially children are delighted to meet these characters.
For the Paralympic Games, the mascot is a blue character covered with green and yellow leaves, the color of the Brazilian flag, symbolizing the rich flora of the country. The two creatures embody all of the diversity of Brazil. These are characters that always delight the young and old.
I find them beautiful. They're too cute.
The mission of the mascots sometimes exceeds their role as ambassadors. The stars of the Vancouver Winter Olympics in 2010 were Grizzly Sumi, Miga, the orca, and Mook Mook, the marmot. Those endangered species on exhibit provide public awareness.
86% of species at risk in British Columbia are at risk because of the degradation and the loss of habitat.
Beyond their playfulness, these mascots mark the competition and generations. Super Victor will look to bring hope to the future and the games.
Okay, I gotta say something. First of all, Super Victor looks, there's a commercial in Israel about the Israeli Cheetos called Bamba. He looks like the Bamba baby.
Yeah.
He does. He looks like Bamba baby. I want to start with the French and break this down. Okay, they had a rooster, a chicken as a mascot, and afterwards they cooked it in some wine.
Yeah, like Beaujolais, foie gras.
This is our mascot,
kind of
and now it's a coq au vin.
And it was a winner mascot. I mean, he won the World Cup. Let's eat it.
What I'm trying to figure out the idea behind bringing all the mascots to the next World Cup.
And for some reason, they say it's delightful.
Yeah.
I would say money. Remember Spaceballs when the guy said merchandise? That's where the money is all about.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
I think you should
Sorry,
let it out.
So not
sorry,
one
sponsors.
doll, but all the dolls
Yes,
together.
buy
Look how
all
much
the
more you can
merchandise.
buy.
Bring me money.
Because Super Victor, with all due respect, looks like the kid that we beat on in elementary school, right?
Yeah, but then he rises and he's the mascot of the tournament.
And he's a super.
How many years of mascots are you? Why do the fans need this?
Just to spend more money. It's from 1966, almost 50 years. The Euro 2016 will mark 50 years of mascots. You ask the fans if they like it. I'm betting the answer is no. But then again, it's nice for the kids. Let's see the dolls.
It does move it on to the next generation.
Pretty much.
In many ways. I don't know.
It's sometimes hard to sell the very young generation football. So let's sell them a nice little doll and maybe
that
we can
they
buy
can wear
it
on a T-shirt, on a cup, and a mug. That they can sit there. I want to go and see Super Victor at the
then Daddy can go and take
buy
the kids
me some more stuff.
Buy me Super Victor for whatever it costs.
I think that I actually figured out the way to stop hooliganism in football games. Okay, people should not be beating up on the other fans and the other team's fans. Rather beat up on the mascot.
Pretty much.
You know, so that's what we should do. And have the mascots so somebody beats the living crap out of him.
Will prevent violence. I like the idea.
Right?
You're not a fan of Super Victor.
No, I'm just like I'm going here with Jonathan, who I think is slightly upset. But coming up in your show, anything? What's coming up in your show?
Yes, talking football tonight, Monday edition, covering all the events from Spain and England. And if it's Spain, it's Leo Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. You break one record, I'll break the other. 2 weeks ago, Leo Messi set a brand new record, 253 goals in La Liga. What did Cristiano Ronaldo do this time?
Break it.
He scored his 23rd hat-trick in La Liga. He scored all 3 goals when Real Madrid beat Celta Vigo 3-0. 23rd time Cristiano Ronaldo does that in the Spanish league. Of course, that's a record.
Yeah.
He scored his 200th goal in La Liga. His pace of 23 goals in 13 matches, 1.77 per match. That's a record. I don't like the two of them, you know? I don't like it. I don't like the fact. You break one record, I'll break another record. Your team spends hundreds of millions. My team will also spend. I hope Atletico Madrid wins again. And again and again and again.
No, I'm
They're
with you.
third
And I
at the
love it when
moment.
you let your emotions out, Jonathan.
Yes.
Exactly. Next time, tear your shirt open.
You're sure the fans
will do. Sadly, all the time we have, I'm hearing the Oscar music in my ear.
Sad it
I
is
know.
that
That's
time
all
is
for
up.
us, folks. Join us again at the top of. Join us again tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning to start your day with another edition of I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be every single day. Okay? That's it. We've said our piece.